did you have any follow-up conversation with Eric Stoltz afterwards, after you found out you were in it and he wasn't?
The one conversation I did have with Eric.
Everybody, we are so excited that we have Robert Krantz with us. Robert was bystander number
Bystander number
two.
two.
Who is that guy?
That's George McFly.
Second is the best, right? And in Back to the Future. Robert, thank you for making time for our group and for us. And thanks for being here today.
My pleasure. And I was doing an interview for a movie recently, and the interviewer was so funny. And he started out, I thought he was going to say something about my most recent one. He goes, "I love your work as bystander number two in Back to the Future." And I laughed. I forgot that's what they called me. That's why, by the way, on all my films now, I go through all the actors and I give them all names, because no one wants to be known as bystander. You want a real name, George Wilson or something. But there I was.
Yeah, no,
too.
that's good, because even in other films, like they'll start off with a name like this, but usually there's some kind of novelization or something that comes out after where they get a name, and you're bystander number two.
That's me, bystander number two. That's George McFly.
But I mean, your part, while your character may not have a name, it is a significant part in the film. It's a memorable part of the film.
That's crazy.
So how did that come to happen? How did you get into Back to the Future?
It's a really funny, interesting story. I was studying at the Loft, as was Sachi Parker, who was the actress that was next to me in that scene, as was Eric Stoltz. For those of you that know from Back to the Future lore, he was the original Marty McFly. And I remember in class, Eric had gotten the job, and I think he was coming off of Mask. I think it was Mask. And so it was like really well known. And everyone's like, "Oh my God, he's doing a Spielberg film, et cetera, et cetera." And so it's really cool. And then, I don't know, like a month and a half, 2 months later, I remember turning and seeing him walk in the door, and he had a long black overcoat on, and he looked like he was going to a funeral. He just looked like down and beaten. And I thought, wow, what happened there? And then kind of word got out that, he had been replaced on the movie. And to this day, I can't quite remember how, but somebody, my agent or somebody called them and said, "Hey, we want you to do a part in this movie, Back to the Future." And I'm thinking, that thing's a bomb. If you fired Eric, like, that's going nowhere, because he's a really good actor. And I'm thinking, I think they shot like $6 million worth of film. And it's got to be a mess at this point. So I go, all right, fine. I go, where is it? It was on the Universal lot, I think. And I got my gym bag, go, and I go, okay, I'll get there at like 2 by 4. I'm out of there. Good. Boom, pick a paycheck, go out to the gym. So I get, boom, my bag, go to my little cupboard, then my little room I'm supposed to go. And I'm sitting there, and it's like 3:30. I'm like, oh man, this is taking forever. It's 4. And also, the guy that played Marty McFly's the dad, he was Crispin Glover, was also from the Loft. So we all kind of knew each other. And so
And that's the name of the acting school?
It was called The Loft with Peggy Fury.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, Sachi talked a lot about Peggy Fury. Yep.
Yeah, Peggy was, man, loved her, man. She was the best. Taught me a lot about acting. And all the big, so-called big stars were, that's where Sean Penn, Chris Penn, Meg Ryan, Michelle Pfeiffer, everyone was there at that time. And there was many, many more. They were just great actors, and everyone was, learning from everyone. So I get there and I'm waiting. It's like 2, 3 hours. So eventually I go over to Sachi and I'm like, "Hey, is this, like, what are we doing here?" It's like, are they running behind? And so it then goes into dinner. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, maybe I could make it late to the gym. And now, I'm telling you, Sachi, you may hate me for saying this, but it's the truth. At one point, when it got to be like 8 or 9, it was dark out, knock on my door, and Sachi comes in. She's like, do you know Spielberg's not directing this? And I go, no, it's some guy, Zemeckis, I think. She goes, the only reason I took this is because I thought Spielberg was directing it. She goes, what are we doing here? And so I go, can you believe this? We're like sitting here waiting. And then somewhere around like 10 or 11, I don't know what it was, but it got to be double time. So now I'm like, okay, the gym is off. We're stuck. This isn't going anywhere. And Sachi and I, we got together and we're like, okay, man, like we're just going to lay low and hope that we get double time on this because it would be killer. It'd be so good. It got to be like midnight, 1 o'clock. I'm still sitting there and waiting. And then Sachi knocked out. We started talking and said, I think we're going to get golden time. And golden time's like through the roof. And we're like, okay, man, we're in this. Like we're just hoping. At that point, we're just we don't want them to forget about it so we can get it in the gold time. Sure enough, we went in the gold time. We were the last shot, and it was like I think 3 or 4 in the morning. That was just daylight wasn't that far around the corner, and so we shoot the scene. Crispin was such a gem. I know he's kind of had a reputation, whatever, but in the scene, he walks away from me, and she says, "Who was that? That's George McFly." I say, "That's George McFly." Crispin every time would go do the walk, do the wave, and look at me. Gave me a great eye line. He was great. They were all really wonderful. I worked with J.J. Cohen too, who was one of the three kids. He was in Paradise Motel with me, so I knew J.J. I knew Billy Zane a little bit. I'd worked with his father on that film, Do You Want to Dance? So I kind of knew people on that film. But I'll never forget, we got to shoot the scenes fine. It's like, what, 4 or 5 in the morning. Like, all right, here we go. And I had a couple of lines. I don't even see Zemeckis. He's got a microphone. And he goes, Robert Krantz. I go, yeah. He said, just say that's George McFly. I'm thinking, oh my God. Now I'm down to one line. This movie's just got to suck. I mean, this has got to suck. So I'm just sitting there, I go, okay. I think we did maybe 2 takes, 3 takes. And then that was it. Everyone was really cool, got out of there. And I thought, bomb, this has got a bomb. And so months later, I get a invitation to a premiere down in Westwood. And I go, let me see how this thing ever turned out. Because I'm just curious, like, how do you get rid of Eric and still turn out a good film? So I go there. I can't quite tell because it'd be kissing out of and telling out of school. But I had just started dating a famous actress, and so I thought, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna see if I'm in this film still, and see if she notices it's me when we're in the theater. So we're sitting there, and the movie's playing, and I'm thinking, it's probably a dumb movie anyway. And it gets about halfway through the movie, and I think, oh my God, this is a hit. What was my line? What did I say? I couldn't remember what the line was. And I'm thinking, was it something about McFly? And what was he doing? He was looking down at something. I'm trying to remember, like, oh my God, please let me in this movie because you knew halfway through this thing was a hit. And all of a sudden, bam, up I come. And I'm like, I'm in the movie. And I turn to my date and I go, what did that guy just say? And she looks up and she said, was that you? And she turned to me. She goes, oh my God, you're dangerous. So great first impression. And so the movie ends and I go to the phone and I call up my manager. And I said, well, there's good news and bad news. The good news is I'm in a massive hit movie. It's going to be a massive hit. The bad news is I've got one line in it. But as it turned out, to this day, I still get paychecks for that film every other month or every month. It hasn't stopped for how many years has it been now?
This year's a big one.
40 years.
I still get checks from it. Wow. Isn't that crazy?
I mean, it's wild because you were thinking it's going to be a turd, and then
completely.
It turns out to be this.
I was ready to go, and then all of a sudden, when I went to the screening, I went, "Wow, it was incredible! I loved it. It's great." And I'll tell you a funny part too. So my wife and I have triplet boys, and for years, I just as they were growing up, I was like, I just want to be their dad. I don't want to talk about movies or any of that stuff. I just want to be dad. And then they got to be, I don't know, it was maybe 7, 8, something like that. And I thought, all right. And I said, you know what? I'm going to show it to the boys and like kind of get the, oh my gosh, Dad, is that you? So we played the movie and they're totally into it. I'm thinking, oh, this is going to be great. And up comes me with my little line and nothing. Like they just keep watching the movie. I go, wait, what did that guy just say? And they're like, I don't, Dad, quiet, just quiet. And I go, wait, I want to hear that part again. Play it again. Nothing. And so I go, guys, hold on a second. Rewind it and I freeze it. He goes, you can't miss it. And I walk up next to him and I go, does that guy look familiar to you? And they said in Greek we call him Theo, which means uncle. And this guy named Demo, we call him Uncle Demo. And they go, oh my God, it's Theo Demo. I go, no, you guys, it's me. It's me. They couldn't conceive that it was me. And even when the credits, when it said Robert Krantz, are like, they took your name. So
Are they impressed now?
no. I did something the other day that I was going to put on social media, but I just get too busy. I was on a plane and Back to the Future's on. I freezed on that frame where I come on. You can see Michael J. Fox, and I was going to write, happened to catch this classic movie, and I was going to say the secondary actors were pretty good in this movie, if you ask me, but I didn't put it up there. Got to do it one of these days, though.
Absolutely. I know you just said you were in the trailer for a whole lot, but did you film? Were you part of other scenes as well, or was that just that shot was it?
I think that was pretty much it. I remember they had Wet It Down. That was, to me, that was like big money when you wet down a scene. Like, oh man, who has that kind of money? It's make it slick looking. And I just remember watching some of it. Um, I remember what's the name of the girl that plays his wife?
Leah
Um,
Thompson.
yeah, Leah. She's very sweet.
Yep.
I remember going in the trailer and looking at how they aged, and I'm like, "Wow, is that what we're all going to look like
Mm,
when we get older?" But she was great. Mike was cool. I didn't really talk to him that much. He was, everyone was on their game and doing what they were supposed to do.
yeah.
It made it work, I think.
Did you have any follow-up conversation with Eric Stoltz afterwards, after you found out you were in it and he wasn't?
No, because you know what? It was such a bad moment for him, and I think he's had to
Yeah.
live that moment up over so many times. Um, I don't wish that on anybody that it just sucks when you get. And also Peggy, I think it was, yeah, it wasn't that long after that Peggy died in the car
Mm,
crash, and that was, the one conversation I did have with Eric was, look, I did a scene at the loft, and it was a intense scene, and I remember the actress I was working with had said to me prior to the scene, I just don't believe you. I think I was kidding. The scene I'm supposed to kidnap her, and she didn't believe it. I just don't believe you. Well, that was like the worst thing to tell me before a scene because I'm going to kidnap you in the scene now. Like you're as good as gone. And so I remember it ratcheted up, and then at one point I walked by her, and I think my hip hit her chair that she was tied to, and it fell. And the class was like, "Ugh," and I thought, well, I'm either going to break and go, oh my gosh, I'm sorry, or we're going to keep rolling. And I just kept going. And then after a minute, she yelled out, stop, stop, I can't take this. And she ran off. And I think all the guys in the class wanted to kill me, because they were pissed. And Peggy, that was the day class, and I came to the night class. And Peggy was at the top of the steps, and I was leaving the night class. And she yelled down at the top of the steps. I can still see her to this day. And she said, Robert, how are you? And I was drained from that morning still. And she said, never apologize for what you did today. That's what everyone's trying to get to in acting.
mm,
And it was within a day or two that I got my first like week job, which was on hotel. It was like my first big paying week job. And the moment I got it, within an hour, somebody called me from the class and said she had died. It was the
Mm.
last thing she said to me. And, I loved her, man. I loved her. And I don't know what in the world she ever saw in me, but I knew she really liked me. And I never got it. There were so many other people that were stars and more valuable to her and more everything. I don't know what it was she saw in me, but I always knew I was special in her eyes. And her daughter said that to me when I saw her at the funeral. And that was the first time someone had ever died in my life that I think in my early 20s, and I just couldn't comprehend it. At her funeral, I literally could not stop crying. I just could not stop. And that, even I've lost both my parents, and I guess you learn how to deal with death at a certain point, but it was blindsided me so much. I just could not stop crying. It
Mm.
was just horrible. I still miss her to this day because I think she'd get a kick out of, what I did and what I did with what she taught me, and I think she'd get a kick out of it. But what I was gonna say with Eric, I think I was in Westwood that night, and I do recall seeing Eric, and he was kind to me, whereas the other guys were ready to jump on me or something. I don't know, but he was very kind, and I remember having a good exchange with him,
Mm.
and that was cool.
The loft, is that would they movies come looking for people there, or would you have like auditions? Would they send you to auditions, or would they just come around and like recruit people? Seems like it was the place
No,
that would.
you had agents and managers, but the agents and managers would always tell you, hey, get better, keep studying. And then you're like, okay, where should I study? There was two or three places I studied that really were, if you were going to study, you were going to study, in my opinion, Stella Adler was the greatest.
Yeah.
She's the greatest of all time. And I was fortunate. I mean, she went back to Marlon Brando, Warren Brady, De Niro, that like that. I was fortunate enough that I was able to study with her. Uh, and that I was really grateful for it because I learned so much in that class. Peggy was nuts and bolts and really no BSing around. And then Candy Herman was another one that I studied with. Bobby, what was his name? Bobby from the original Actor Studio. He was great. But really, it was Peggy and Stella Adler. Those were the two. And so you would go there, and then you would see all these other really good actors. But you'd get up there and you'd see, you know, what do they say? The sausage going to the sausage factory. You would see like, okay, this actor's great, but they're screwing up today, and this teacher's having to correct them. Like Nicolas Cage was in that class. I remember he did a scene. I think it was from Taxi Driver, and he did it completely different than De Niro. And Peggy said to him, why are you doing that? And he goes, well, I didn't want to do like De Niro. And she goes, no, 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 no. Then she gave a whole lecture on that. I saw her with Crispin. He was crazy with her. He was coming up with some crazy stuff. But you got to see actors working. And a lot of what I learned was just by sitting there and observing and watching. Somebody once called me the Sphinx because I would sit and I would just lock in. I would just observe and observe and observe, I was fascinated by it and loved it. So that's to this day, that's probably my primary love is watching that and dancing and watching
Mm.
actors work, and I learned at that loft was, but it kind of died down after Peggy passed away, which is a shame.
Sure. Now, she seemed like a very special person who just left a lasting impact on everyone that she's worked with.
She ever, man. She did. She was no BS, man. And if you got up on that stage and started, she didn't put up with any errors, and she was very sweet about it. But if you pulled any of that nonsense, man, she didn't go for it.
Mm.
And she'd let you know in a very subtle, sweet way. Don't. So I never, I never did any of that stuff. Man. Came there trying to work as hard as I could.
So you speak like I love, you can hear the passion and the care for the craft. How did
Yeah.
you get into acting? Is that something you wanted to do from an early age, or did you kind of
No,
stumble into it?
I was all through middle school and high school. I was focused on basketball. That's all I wanted to be was in basketball. And then when that was over in my senior year, I'm like, oh man, what am I going to replace that? Like I spent thousands of hours trying to get better at that. And I remember once we were doing it at a school assembly. I don't remember what was happening, but I remember I did something funny and I heard like 300 people laugh. I was like, okay, wait a second. So I was pre-law at Arizona State, and I took one acting class. And for whatever reason, after that, I wrote in the yearbook, my friend Dave and I wrote in the yearbook, see you in the movies. And somewhere in my head, I thought, well, that's what I'm going to do. And I had never been in a play. I had never,
Mm.
other than that one freshman year acting class, which I was horrible in, horrible. I thought, well, I think this is what I want to do. And so it just so happened, it was my sophomore year, a movie called Night Kill came to town with Robert Mitchum, Mike Connors, Jacqueline Smith, and one of my fraternity brothers, his mom was a location scout. And they said, hey, anybody want to be a PA? I don't know what a PA was. I'm like, I'll be it. But I was president of my fraternity. I was taking a full load. I was on two honors class, or whatever they call them, society things at the college. I was jammed up, but I'm like, I'm not letting this opportunity pass. So I was working full time on the movie and then going to school. I got so sick. And, but that was how it began. And then I was an extra in one of the scenes, appropriately a dance scene with one of the people. But I learned so much on that movie about how you behave, what somebody does when they're not behaving right, how direct. I really just was soaking so much behavior in. To this day, I mean, I to this day I treat PAs like they're the stars of the movie because that's what I was. And I remember opening a door one day during dailies and getting screamed at, stuff like that I would never do to somebody. But at the end of it, the producer told me, go to film school in New York or at USC. And I thought, I can't go to New York. I said, that's too drastic a move. But I can go to USC. I applied. I didn't get in. My dad, who did not want me to, like, thought I was nuts. God bless him. He called me up, I don't know, a month or two later. He's like, hey, you know that family down the road, the Clarks? Well, I go, yeah, I mean, walk by their house. He goes, well, we were over there, and this guy we met, he knows a guy that knows a guy that knows a guy. Go to the airport, and there's somebody that named Brian Flynn. I'm like, oh, all right, whatever. So I get my little suit on. It's 100 degrees out in Arizona. And Brian Flynn is at the airport. He taps me on the shoulder. And that plane emptied out. I couldn't even find him. And I said, how did you know I was Bob Krantz? He said, you're the only guy with a suit on in 100-degree weather. I figured it had to be you. So long story short, he ended up getting me an interview, and it was at the egg factory in the Valley. So I go there, meet a guy. His last name was Smith. I wish I could remember his name. And he asked me one question: why do you want to be in film school? And it just poured out of me. But on the application at USC, which when they denied me, I said, have you done any poetry? Have you done any still photography? Have you done any short film? It was no, 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 no. I was no across the board. Have you done any acting? I said, no. It was nothing. They should have told me no. I mean, it was like, why are you doing it here? What are you here for? And so I talked to this gentleman, Smith, and he said, okay, thanks, like 15 minutes. And then I called up Brian as I left, and I go, I don't know what that was about. What is the egg factory? Like, what is it? He goes, that's George Lucas's right-hand man.
Mm.
And I said, what's he at the egg factory for? And he goes, they just call it the egg factory because they don't want anybody knowing it has related to Star Wars.
Mm.
So they put me on probation. Whatever I said that day, put me on probation. Cut to, I don't know, was it 30 years later, 35 years later, I did that film. And I was telling my sons this story for school, for their class. And I said, I got to find this guy. So I started going through everything I could do to find Brian Flynn. And every Brian Flynn, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, get out of here. No, get out of here. And then I get this email that says, you found me. And I said, I don't know if you remember me, but you changed my life. And I said, we have this screening of this film, and I'd be honored if you came to it. And he came to that one, and then that one. And then it was like, I don't know, 600 plus people. And I told the story and I had him get up and I thanked him because he changed my life. He didn't even know me. And
Yeah.
had he not done that, I would have been in a film school. So what happened, I got into film school. I'm making my films, and this should tell you, this told me more than enough. And they have a thing, which is if you get held up and you're in film school, you'll give them your keys to your car, you'll give them your watch, you'll give them your wallet, everything. Just don't touch my film because that's my grade. So I went to film school. I went to the school once and I couldn't find my film. And I thought, I searched everywhere for it. And what I realized was I had left it out because I would go every day to the library and study who did De Niro study with, who did Brando study with, who I was trying to find. And it just showed you where my mind was at. It was on acting. And so that's how I found Stella Adler. I'm like, oh my God, Stella Adler, Beatty, De Niro, Brando, and she's here this summer. Okay, I'm studying with her. And I left my film out. Somebody was using it for leader. So, oh God, got through that one. So that's what happened. That's how I got into acting. And then I just worked at it and got slowly got better and better and better until now it's like, it's like a native tongue to me. I love it so much, but yeah, it took years and years to get
Hmm.
better at it.
So, one last question for you, Robert. I would love to hear what's next for you. Are there any projects you're working on, or that you've got coming up that you're excited and that you want to talk about?
I do, thank you. There's a movie I did, or there's a book I wrote called Falling in Love with Sophia. I should have that poster up here. It's a book called Falling in Love with Sophia. What happened was when I finished the last movie, I was so tired. I don't know if I mentioned, but I write, produce, direct, act, edit, co-edit these films and distribute them. It's a low.
What don't you do?
But the thing is, this isn't false modesty or anything, whatever they call it. The truth is that what was slowing me down when I was younger, I'd have a script and I'd have to get a director, and the director wasn't available, then the terms they wouldn't agree to, and then you'd have to get a producer, and then you'd have to get an actor. And it was like, after a while, I'm like, wait, if I can do all these things, we can go a lot quicker. And so that was a huge reason
Yeah.
why I learned to do what I do. So, and then I grew to love it. But falling in love with Sophia was when our triplets were born, I used to go sit in the frame of their bedroom door. And I would sit there, and my son George, invariably it was George, would say after 5 minutes, 10 minutes, Dad, are you still there? Are you still there? It chokes me up to even think about it. And I would always say, I'm here, George, I'm here. And I can't remember if he would say, are you facing me? I can't remember if that was a two, but I was in that door and I would wait until I knew they were sound asleep. But you do that every night. And it's like 10, 20, 15, 20 minutes. So I got on a yellow pad and I started writing. And that became Falling in Love with Sophia. And when I finished Marriage Made in Heaven, I was just exhausted. And I thought, I don't know if I'm going to do this anymore. Part of the reason, candidly, was we were working on such low budgets all the time. It was just brutal on me. It was just, and I thought, well, financially, I don't need to anymore. And so I prayed about it. I said, God, is this what you want me to do? Because if I'm, and if I said, God, if you don't, I'm totally cool with it. You blessed me with 4 great films and all the other stuff I did. I said, I leave with no sorrow or anger. And it took about 2 years to get the answer, but it started coming from average people who would call me up and say, if you're paying attention when God's talking to you, but if you're not paying attention, you miss it. And there were average people that were coming up saying, hey, I think you should make that movie Falling in Love with Sophia. Or, you really have to keep working your film, Save My Marriage, that kind of thing. And so I said, all right, God, I said, but you got to give me a bigger budget, God. And so it'll probably take me a year to raise the money, but hopefully we get a bigger budget. And it's really making these films. The hardest part is the preparation, the mental and physical preparation. That is really, I did you'll never see it in the credits, but I did all the music supervising on the last film. I got every song, licensed it, edited it, made some of the choreography myself, and had a choreographer help with some of it. So it just takes a long time to get it because what I'm trying to do is make faith-based films that don't hit you over the head with, as I say, when you're dealing with Christianity, with dealing with faith, a few drops of that perfume or cologne, it permeates the whole thing. It's like somebody walks by you that has just a hint of you. Oh, well, that smelled good. Conversely, if somebody's got lathered up in that, you're like, okay.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing with Christianity in films. Just a little bit of it goes a long, long way. And then what I try and do in these films, hopefully you'll see it, Matt, is I put a premium on entertainment. I want you to walk away saying, hey, that was really entertaining. And then also put in real life problems and situations that you have to deal with: hope, your dreams of your life, loss of loved ones, falling in love, falling out of love, children, raising them, all those things that are substantial in life. So God willing, a year from now, I'll be close. I'll raise the money and get closer to making this film. If it's meant to be, if it's not, God will stop me. But I have to say, God has been very, somehow, when he wants me to do something, it eventually happens.
Yeah. Well, it's going to come together. I'm going to claim it. I'm going to claim it with you, and can't wait to check it out. Like I've told you, I got to get caught up on the Robert Krantz cinematic universe. So I look forward to doing all that, and I'll report back to you. But I am so thankful for what you do. Like you said, you rattled off 18 things you do to bring one piece to life, and so it's a lot of work. It's a lot of commitment. It's a lot of dedication. I know it's a labor of love, but it's still a labor. And so thank you for that. Thank you for your time.
That's my pleasure.
I'm sure there's a million other things you could do on your Thursday afternoon. And you're here with JD and I am just so grateful.
It's my pleasure, guys. I love talking to you, and I'm glad you took the time to talk to me too.